No,
You didn't get in it? Try it again.
I've tried 5 times.
To the original link?
Yep.
Huh, because there's 115 people in.
It's not going through.
Hi, folks. This is Aaron Jeline. I am working on getting who needs to be in this meeting promoted. So if you'll give me a few minutes here, we will hopefully get started here soon. Thank you.
And I am going to check to make sure we have all of the candidates. Dr. Fahey, are you present? For those of you on in the audience, we had some technical difficulties with our dress rehearsal at 5:30, so we're getting started just a little bit late. And we had to log out of our dress rehearsal and log into this. So please be patient while I corral all of the candidates for tonight's forum. So Dr. Fahey, are you on yet?
Just go to
Mary,
my Zoom application and plug in the ID numbers and the password.
yes, try that. So Mary, Jim is having a little trouble getting on, but he should be here very soon.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Kanan, are you on? And I've left him a couple of voicemail messages confirming what link he needs to join. Who was that? Who just spoke?
Sorry, that's me. I'm on
What's your
the,
name in
I'm on the phone with Jim trying to
My name is
troubleshoot.
James Fahey.
Okay,
Should I just leave it alone?
Yes.
so it looks like we only have 3 panelists so far. Let me double check. Mr. Mieta, did you change yourself or redesignate yourself as a panelist? If not, please do so. All of the candidates, Rick Mieta, Jonathan Andy Dilts, M. Lawler, Mel Knight, John Alsobrook, and Courtney Eichhorst. All of you, if you are on, I need you to redesignate yourself as a panelist, or the host will do that for us. And again, the audience, please stay tuned till we get everybody online.
Whoa, there's 128 participants. Oops, I got
this. Okay, good.
And are you done?
I guess we're done, Aaron. Thank you.
So Mary, I have all of our mayoral candidates ready to go.
Are you ready? I'm ready as can be.
I have to disturb you now.
Ask them if they heard you. I beg your pardon? Ask them if they heard you.
We did hear you, Gary. I just went ahead and muted you while we're waiting for Mary to return.
I'm back. So Aaron, are the council candidates online as well, but they're not identified as panelists quite yet?
Correct. And I won't promote them to panelists until it's their time to join later in the meeting.
Okay, but all 5 of the council candidates are present right now.
The best I can tell, yes.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and get started with this. And I apologize to the audience because of our technical issues that we had earlier, but I think we're ready to get started here with the forum. Welcome to the Village of Corrales Candidate Forum, sponsored and moderated by the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico. Thank you to Erin Julene for hosting and being the tech person for tonight's forum. Before we get too far down the road, I ask every candidate when they are a panelist to please turn off your cell phones or any other device that makes a sound. The only exception is our timekeeper. Thank you. I am Mary H. Smith of the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico. I will moderate tonight's forum. Assisting our league members, timekeeper Cheryl Haker, and question reviewers Karen and Steve Wentworth. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization whose membership is open to both men and women over the age of 16. We were founded 102 years ago in 1920, and our mission is to encourage informed and active participation in government and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. We neither support nor oppose political candidates or parties. We are committed to voter education that allows people to become and remain informed and engaged voters. That is what tonight's forum is laser focused on, 100%. I urge all Corrales voters to visit the League of Women Voters online voter guide to see information about all of your candidates and their answers to questions posed by the League. Go to vote411.org, enter your address, and choose which position and candidate about whom you would like to learn more. This is a great resource for all upcoming general elections. Again, vote411.org. The format and rules for tonight's forum will be as follows. We will start with the candidates for mayor, Jim F. Fahey Jr. and Gary Kanan. Each candidate will give their opening remarks, followed by a question and answer session, and ending with their closing statement. This session for the mayoral candidates will last approximately 1 hour. Then we will have a separate session to hear from the candidates for village council.
Get my life.
The council candidates here tonight are From District 1, Rick Mieta, candidate Cora France is unable to attend tonight. District 3, Jonathan A. Andy Dilts, and M. Lawler Mel Knight. And from District 4, John P. Alsobrook II and Courtney Eichhorst. Each candidate will give their opening remarks, followed by a question and answer session, and ending with their closing statement. This session for council candidates will last approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes. Thank you all for agreeing to share some time with us, and for the candidates, helping to educate the voters about yourself and your candidacies. The candidates drew numbers during our dress rehearsal to determine the order in which they will speak. I will rotate the questioning so that the same candidate will not always go first. Each candidate will again have 90 seconds to give their opening remarks. I will then ask questions of all of the candidates, giving each of them time to answer each question. The response time may vary depending on the question asked, and I will inform everyone and the timekeeper of that response time before each question. Because this is not a debate, rebuttals by the candidates to each other's answers will not be allowed. I encourage the candidates to address your responses to the audience and not challenge, argue with, snipe at, or question each other. Candidates, you do not have to use all of your time for your responses. The less time you take, the more questions we can ask. Candidates, if you ask me to repeat a question, your allotted response time will start as soon as I begin restating the question. Please jot down the question as I ask it, so you will not need to ask me to repeat it. I may increase or decrease the response time depending on the number or complexity of questions and the amount of time remaining. I will ask questions submitted by the community to the league's email address, lwvcnmforum.questions@gmail.com, and perhaps from the league's questions library. The league's question reviewers consolidated questions on the same topic or issue and may have rewritten the questions for clarity and focus. I may do the same. I will ask the candidates as many questions about as many issues as time permits. I will undoubtedly be unable to ask all the questions that have been submitted. I will likely ask some of the same questions in both the mayoral and council sessions. Please understand that the questions asked tonight were reviewed and vetted only by members of the League of Women Voters, primarily by our question reviewers and me. Neither the questions nor the issues have been given to the candidates in advance of tonight's forum. At the end of both the mayoral and council question and answer sessions, each candidate will have 90 seconds to give their closing statement. The format and structure of tonight's forum is intended to permit the candidates an opportunity to introduce themselves and their qualifications to you, the voters, and allow you to get to know their platforms and plans for the future. I remind the candidates that the timekeeper is the most important person in this webinar, and you may not ignore her. When answering the questions, you must keep an eye on her. She will alert you to the time remaining for your questions and your answers, and you must stop talking when she holds up the sign that says stop and rings a bell. If you keep going, she will ring that bell again, and I will stop you. No exceptions. Near the end of each session, we will close the question and answer portion of the forum. Then each candidate will have 90 seconds to make their closing statement. During the mayoral session, the two candidates will be on screen as panelists. The council candidates may remain in the webinar and will be moved into the audience. After the mayoral session is concluded, the council candidates will be designated as panelists and will be on screen for their session. The mayoral candidates will then be moved into the audience. We will have a short break between the two sessions to make sure everyone is present for their respective question and answer sessions. Let's get started. Before the forum, the candidates through numbers and mayoral candidate, Dr. Fahey will present his opening remarks first. Dr. Fahey, 90 seconds.
You're muted.
Our mayor, or Mr. Fahey, you're muted. If you could unmute yourself, thank you.
I should mute. Once again, I'd like to thank League of Women Voters for sponsoring the forum and thank all the citizens who signed on to listen and ask questions. My name is Jim Fahey and I'm running for mayor of Corrales. Why am I running for mayor of Corrales? I believe that I'm the most qualified in this race to lead Corralinos into the future and maintain the quality of life to which we are accustomed. I believe we need to move forward toward a future that honors our past. An important part of that move toward the future is an update of the comprehensive plan so we can identify and focus on the needs of all the citizens in Corrales. Projects are already planned, like the new adult gym at the rec center, the planning, design, and construction of the Performing Arts Center, the planning, design, and construction of the interior drain project will be completed all over the next few years. Let it be known that I would like to include all the citizens of Corrales in our government. We'd like to see greater diversity, young and old, on our committees. And as mayor, I would enforce and defend all village ordinances. Let me say it one more time. As mayor, I will enforce and defend all ordinances. I'm looking forward to serving you as mayor and would appreciate your vote. Let us all work together in collaboration to enhance the quality of life in our village. I can't hear Mary Smith.
I'm sorry. Mr. Kanan, it is now your turn to give your 90 seconds of opening remarks.
Michael called.
Well, thank you. I'm Gary Kanan.
And
I was the mayor for 15
Washington.
years, and there actually were some who think I did a pretty good job during that time. But in recent years, what I and others have envisioned that values of Coralis, density, the Bosque Preserve, freedom of speech by some councilors, if you will, water conservation, some of those qualities have eroded quite a bit. They've gone away almost. I plan to correct that. And I'm going to do my best to reinsert the country values and Corrales values back into the village of Corrales.
Thank you, Mr. Kanan. We'll now go to the first question. And that first question will go to you, Mr. Kanan. So if you can stay unmuted. Again, 90 seconds. What is your number one priority for Corrales and how do you plan to approach it?
My number one for Corrales is now and always has been, including 22 years ago, density. We've got 1 and 2 acre density quality here in Corrales. We need to preserve that. If that goes away, we've lost that value in Corrales. I intend to enforce that with persistence in the standards of the planning and zoning primarily.
Thank you, Dr. Fahey.
Let's say my first priority would be to put together a comprehensive plan. We need an update so we can get an idea of what the people in the village desire most of all. I believe that the 1 acre and the 2 acre lot sizes are important, but now we have issues with senior living. We have issues with casitas. We have a number of issues that may impact our groundwater. And so we have to focus on how the village feels about those issues and how we should focus into the future.
Thank you. The next question, Dr. Fahey, you'll go first. In your view, what are the mayor's top 3 responsibilities? 90 seconds.
Well, the mayor serves as chief executive officer. He also serves as I guess you'd call him the chief police officer. And he is also the enforcement officer for all the ordinances. He sets the agenda for the meetings. And those are primarily the issues of the mayor. His other sort of a secondary job is to vote in cases of ties on the village council.
Thank you. Mr. Kanan, 90 seconds.
Thank you very much for the question. I think that the top priority would be to ensure that the administration of the village of Corrales takes in the citizens and make sure that they have the proper information and that their staff conducts and responds to the village needs. I think that another priority is that we need to offer, the only thing I offer and ever had is police and protection, police and fire protection. Everything else comes by nature and we need to do that. But that is the second priority. And otherwise, the priorities would be, of course, and the density and the quality of value standards.
Thank you. Next question. We'll go first to you, Mr. Kanan. What element of village government do you think is most effective and why?
It's most, the question was, is what is most effective? I'd say the police department is most effective right now. We have been known as the safest village, safest community in the state of New Mexico. And I would say that would be, I would continue to enforce that standard, if you will. We've got good fire protection. That's another one. So those are the issues that I think are most important and have been most effective.
Thank you. Dr. Fahey?
Well, I agree that our police and our fire are very good to have, and they're very good and well-trained. But I think the most effective part of the village is our planning and zoning department, because they enforce all of our ordinances. Excuse me. They enforce all the ordinances when dealing with issues of land use, for example. As stated previously about our 1 house to 1 acre and 1 house to 2 acres, and issues related to contamination of the soil and the groundwater. So I think the most effective part of our government is the planning and zoning department. And it's all made up of very well-intentioned, well-educated volunteers. And we rely on their judgment and their skills tremendously.
Thank you. And the next question will go to you first, Dr. Fahey. How do you view the mayor's relationship with the council? Would you approach that role differently from previous village mayors? If yes, how?
I think the village mayor's office is primarily one of setting the agenda and running a meeting. Occasionally you vote in the chance of a tie of the village council. But basically the mayor is an administrator who makes sure everything runs smoothly and tries to maintain a very civil meeting so that we can get things done.
Thank you. Mr. Kanan.
That's can be a difficult situation once in a while. Over 15 years when I was mayor, I had a number of different councils, and on occasion we didn't agree on everything. But I do think the mayor and the council have to attempt a good coordination and to make things even in Corrales, where it would be a smooth operation. And the mayor needs to honor and respect each councilor's opinion. And I would expect the council to do the same with me.
Thank you. The next question will go to you, Mr. Kanan, first. 90 seconds again. The governing body has voted to restrict commercial cannabis growing operations away from residential areas. In your opinion, Where is the appropriate location for commercial cannabis growing operations?
Well, it would appear to me that the only place available now would be in the commercial zone. It is restricted from the residential areas. So the commercial zone is the only befitting place that I can think of at the time. If there are others, we would have to discover what that is, but I don't know what it is right now.
Thank
And I
you,
would-
Dr. Fahey. Oh,
The
I'm
only
sorry.
area where commercial marijuana can be grown is in the commercial core. It has been recently restricted from use in any of the residential areas, the A1 or A2 zones. And that's as a result of recently passed ordinance. That ordinance will be enforced and defended.
Thank you. The next question, again, 90 seconds, and we'll go first to you, Dr. Fahey. If a proposal came before you to build or acquire a new piece of public infrastructure, such as a major land parcel, roadway, or buildings, how would you evaluate whether the project was worth implementing?
You'd first have to have a plan for the usage of that property or land. Once a plan had been decided upon for the use of that property, then in order to move ahead, you would have to have approval of the village council, because you can't spend any money or move ahead on any kind of project like that unless you have a buy-in from the village council. To buy land, you would have to definitely have a plan for how it would be used. You would have to have appraisals. I mean, we're getting very specific here. Basically, you would have to have a buy-in, a vote by the council to approve any purchase or project, I guess you could say, that you want to do.
All right, thank you. Mr. Keenan.
I think that the infrastructure should be continually evaluated to present the best situation that we have in the village of Corrales. We have a competent public works division right now. And I think I would communicate with those people and encourage them to do that. We could also call on the other government agencies, like the Council of Governments and so forth, as to what their suggestions might be as to how we might be able to improve the village of Corrales and still maintain our 1 acre density or 2 acre density and water quality and so forth.
Thank you. The next question will go to you, Mr. Keenan, first. An increasing number of Corrales' senior residents find it difficult to maintain their home in the village, but treasure the Corrales lifestyle and want to remain here. Should the village allow clusters of senior housing to be constructed in the village? And if so, where? 90 seconds.
Cluster housing has been an issue over the years, even when I was the mayor some time back. I think cluster housing would be okay if it still meets the demands of the standards of the density. I do not think we should compromise density to increase to do that. I do believe that we should attempt, if we can, to accommodate senior citizens. They need it. They've been here for a long time and they deserve it, but we have to work it out.
Thank you. Dr. Fahey.
Well, I am concerned about the senior citizens, and I think that there may be a way to work this out, but I think it's going to take an evaluation by planning and zoning. I think having a comprehensive plan will actually give us some data and some logistics about how many people we're talking about. And that might help us decide on an area that would have less impact. Because regardless, until we have a sewer line, for example, we cannot increase the density in this village. And you have to have planning and zoning to help you in dealing with the density issue and with the changes in any kind of ordinance that would allow this to occur. I would start with the comprehensive plan, focus on senior related issues and their housing, because I agree, a lot of people want to live in a little less sizable piece of land as you get older.
Thank you. And the next question will go to you, Dr. Fahey, first. Regarding the concept of a second residence on a 1 acre property for a mother-in-law unit or casitas. Casitas or mother-in-law units are part of the New Mexican lifestyle. Should the village set limits on the construction of such home additions known as casitas or mother-in-law quarters?
At the present time, casitas are not allowed in the village of Corrales. We're only allowed one residence per acre or one residence per 2 acres. I believe the casita issue is before planning and zoning right now, being discussed, being determined as to whether or not there might be some way to do it. But right now, it is a settled law. It violates the existing ordinance, and there's no way a casita should have been built. Now, the people who have casitas, they get to keep them, obviously, but we have to work this out in planning and zoning.
Thank you. Mr. Kanan.
Casitas have been around this village for a long time. And as long as they are used for which they were intended, I think that will work. I think that that's one of the erosions that we've had. This administration, if you will, or recent years have let casitas get away. I don't believe that we should use casitas as a rental property. It's designed to house a member of the family, perhaps, that needed to do that. And so I think we need to tighten up on the casita issue in the village of Corrales. A residence with a casita with a 2-bedroom or a 2 garage capacity is out of the question, but it has happened. It won't happen with me.
Thank you. The next question, again, we'll start with you, Mr. Kanan. What steps will you take to support and promote the art community in Corrales? What is your vision of the future for the Corrales art community? And what have you done personally to contribute positively to the Corrales art and cultural community?
I just met with the president of the Corrales Art Society and confided in him that I will definitely support a arts and cultural district in the village of Corrales. I think that's important. I think the art community in Corrales is part of what Corrales is, if you will. We're proud of it. I plan to do that extensively. As a matter of fact, and I would like to support and maybe sponsor an art museum for historic art that would include Corrales and other artists, so we could preserve that and become an art destination.
Thank you. Dr. Fahey.
Yeah, I believe that the art community here is very extensive. There's like 17 different organizations that contribute to the art in the community. I think that a performance art center is a big step. I think we need to move forward on that. There is an area that is planned for the future to build a performing arts center. I believe that we should participate in as many of the fiestas or shows that are demonstrated, they're put on here in the village. So yes, no, it's a big part of the village, and I'm very supportive of it. I believe that if we could put forth a performance arts center, that would do a great deal toward advancing the art here in the community and bring more people here to spend money on the art.
Thank you. And the next question will go to you, Dr. Fahey, first.
Yes, ma'am.
How will you, as mayor, encourage collaborative partnerships to improve public safety? What is your position on the current status of the police fire departments? And would you propose any changes to those two departments?
Well, I'm very proud of our police department and our fire department. I think that the police department has made us one of the safest communities in the state, if not the safest. And our firemen, our firefighters have been requested all over the West to fight fires. So I would do everything I could to maintain their training, to make sure that they continue to do their job, both in the police department and the fire department. There is another alternative that we could actually improve the ability of the fire department to fight fires in the bosque with a fire suppression system that perhaps could occur just in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan.
The fire department and the police department have known that I've been a strong supporter of them over the years. I also endorsed and would like to see an improvement, if you will, on neighborhood watch. That used to be very successful in the village of Corrales, and everybody cooperated on that. That was one of the reasons why we had the safest village, because everybody knew what everybody else was doing from the standpoint of criminality and stuff like that. We don't have a big problem anymore in the neighborhoods. And that is one of the reasons why we don't. But I would like to see us improve a little bit on neighborhood watch.
Thank you. And the next question is somewhat related, and we'll start with you, Mr. Keenan. Would you support seeking funding for the purchase of electric police cars? And from whom might you seek this money?
I think electric cars are still an issue that needs to be developed a little bit more. I would certainly not encourage, I'd certainly discourage investigation of it. I think we ought to consider everything that would be a possibility. I can't say right now that I would endorse a purchase of it at the time. I'd have to get a recommendation, if you will, from the police department, and make sure that we have the approval of the manufacturers of that.
Thank you, Dr. Fahey.
I certainly would collect as much information as I could about the availability and the performance of an electric vehicle. But as has been said, I certainly would also consult with the police department as to whether it would handle the issues that they are confronted with. Police cars get a lot of special equipment on them. We would want to be sure that whatever vehicle is purchased has enough power in the vehicle to handle whatever equipment is on it, and also be sure that its performance is adequate to provide for the safety of the police department and for their ability to do their job. But no, as far as contributing to helping abate climate change, I think it would be a great idea, but it certainly requires more study and more information and more consultation.
Thank you. And Dr. Fahey, you'll go first with this next question. The village's Main Street downtown area struggles with attracting and sustaining businesses that provide gross receipts to the village. How would you suggest improving economic development in this area?
We have a Corrales Main Street that serves more like a chamber of commerce. They can certainly help us in deciding what types of businesses would do best in our village, what types of business would be more like a niche business, or a terminal-like business. like your restaurants. They do very well down here. But I think there are other art-related businesses that perhaps we could probably provide them some assistance in finding a place to set up. Professional businesses also could be assisted in finding an office. All you can do is go out and search and look and ask and see if you can get as much interest as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Canaan.
The gross receipts from businesses in Corrales right now are at somewhat of an all-time high, and that's good. And I would continue to try to improve on that if it's possible. I think the mayor and the administration and all of the agencies in the village need to make sure they handle businesses with great respect and support, and encourage us to increase more. I don't have a plan for that at the time, but I would certainly work on that.
Thank you. And the next question will go to you, Mr. Canaan. With the impacts from COVID, it is evident that technology and internet service is a vital component for government, schools, and businesses. How would you propose to improve service and computer access to all in Corrales? And how would you use the advances in technology to make the village government more efficient?
Well, I would lean on the fire department and those people who have been upfront in connection with countering the COVID. It's a serious situation, and we need to be alert on what we can do to improve our existence with that. I don't know how long it's going to be around, but we have to assume that it will be here for some time. And I think Tanya and the police department has done a tremendous job in the vaccination process, and I certainly support that vaccination. I don't know if I'd do a mandate, but I would encourage total vaccination, if you will, for that. And I think the schools and other agencies that have audiences, if you will, need to be alert, need to take that into consideration.
Thank you. Dr. Fahey.
So I interpreted your question a little different, focusing primarily on the technology. I would try to get a broadband here in the village. There is apparently a lot of federal money out there for broadband access, and I would do what we could to get whatever cables we needed, whatever access we needed. I remember a few years ago that there was an attempt by Sandoval County to bring a broadband through this area. We have a interior drain, and there's an interior drain project that's sort of being discussed. And one of the things that could go through that interior drain is a cable, a broadband cable, and that would facilitate better internet access throughout the entire village. Speaking of the COVID, the response here in the village has been great, but I don't really get that from your question.
Thank you. And the next question will again start with you, Dr. Fahey. With recent hacks to Bernalillo County government, hospitals, schools, and other groups, how would you implement safeguards for Corrales' computer system?
Well, the best thing we can do is just ask the experts and get experts to help us put up the firewalls we need to protect our systems. And even the best companies apparently aren't the best at putting up firewalls. So all we can do is request, get as much assistance as we can, and back up as possible so that we don't lose much if we get hit. And it's probably not if we get hit, but when we get hit. But we should do the best we can with the consultants that we can get to help us fight this problem. It's a problem all over the country.
Thank you. Mr. Canaan.
Well, I must admit that I have to rely on other sources, mostly here in the village of Corrales, for expertise in computers. But I would certainly investigate and support any expertise coming in from the outside that we could bring into the village of Corrales would be welcome. I suggest that we upgrade our system as much as possible, me included, if you will. So we'll go with that.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Keenan. Adequate water and sewer systems are factors in economic and environmentally sensitive development. Is a Corrales-wide water and sewer system a priority for you?
Yes. Water and sewer in the village of Corrales is a priority. It always has been. I frankly think that the system that we have now is a mistake. We have to improve on that, because the system we have now really doesn't work. It continually breaks down. It needs continual maintenance and repair. I would like to see something that, and I would investigate a procedure that would eliminate septic tanks, because they contribute to the water situation that is not desirable. They contaminate the water, if you will, right under the aquifer that we draw our drinking water from. So we have to do something to improve that situation.
Thank you. And if I could just chime in, you guys are really breezing through the questions. Thank you for that. The next question, and we'll
Wait,
start
you didn't
with
ask me.
Mr. Oh, I'm sorry.
I wouldn't say a sewer system is a priority, but I would say that we do need to investigate, because we're going to need to have a sewer system someday. And we don't want to do it before our water gets contaminated. I think a comprehensive plan will give us an idea of how much agreement we have in the village to move forward on a sewer line. There is a possibility in this interior drain project that we could actually put a large sewer line in there and then connect the east side of Corrales Road to that, which would help a great deal. But that would only be a beginning. And we need a plan, a long-term plan for the entire village. And I mean, maybe 20 years down the road, long-term.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I forgot you, Dr. Fahey. The next question, we'll start with you, Dr. Fahey, is there seems to be new opportunities for communities like Corrales to apply for state and federal funds for local improvement projects. How aggressively should the village pursue applying for these funds?
Many of these funds require a match. Many of these funds require a plan. So we would, and some of the plans require money. So we would have to probably spend money to get the money. We should do that, because if your project has a plan, is shovel ready, you have a better opportunity to get either state or federal funding. And there is a lot of state and federal funding available.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan.
I think we need to continue and establish a closer relationship with legislators that serve the village of Corrales. That's the secret in getting funds from outside of the village of Corrales and from federal agencies and so forth, including the state. So I think we need to shore that up a little bit and increase our communication with those people. Let them know what we need and convince them what we need. We have a track. I have a track record in connection with that, and I don't know what I haven't heard a thing about our legislators serving the village of Corrales recently, and I think we need to do that.
Thank you. The next question will go to you first, Mr. Keenan. How will you deal with fellow councilors and the mayor? Well, you're the mayor. How will you deal with fellow councilors when there are significant disagreements when making decisions?
I don't know as if I understood the question quite right, but I think that there needs to be a continual respect and communication with the council. I did not enjoy that, frankly, in much of the time when I was council before, but I think there's a good group of quality people that are going for the council right now. And I would support those people in discussing issues with them and make sure that we agree on the same level.
Thank you. Dr. Fahey?
So there has to be a mutual respect between the village councilors and the mayor. You may not always agree, but that's your right. You don't have to agree with everybody, and you have a right to your own opinion. But in government, you have to reach a common ground. It's necessary sometimes for people to compromise a little bit on issues in order to reach a common ground and to do the best thing for our village. It's very important for us to have respect and for everything to remain civil in our discussions and our discourse. I would anticipate that we can get along. We can certainly come to a conclusion. We can certainly come to a compromise, and we can move forward in getting things done for the village of Corrales. If everybody is on the same page of doing something good for the village of Corrales, then I think eventually we will come to a consensus.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with you, Dr. Fahey. What distinguishes you from your fellow candidate for mayor?
Well, I've had a lot of experience in many different areas. My most recent experience has been up at the Southern Sandoval County Arroyo Flood Control Authority, where I've put together a number of projects with my engineers, and sorry about that, and have been able to obtain both state and federal legislative funds. I think that will help the village of Corrales in moving forward on some of these projects that we have in the works. I have a large amount of experience in the professional world. I'm a very professional person. I'm very truthful, honest, and straightforward, and I believe in this village.
Thank you. Mr. Kanan?
I have a record of doing things in Corrales that benefits the village of Corrales over the years, in 15 years that I've been here. I don't think that Mr. Fahey has a record like that. And although he's been on the council, and I've always considered Jim Fahey a friend of mine, and we get along fine. But I think we certainly, what he presents is a continuation of the past administration and what we've just seen, and what many people want to do away with. They want to improve on things that the last 4 years have seen. And I intend to do that.
Thank you. And the next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Kanan. If you are not elected, what would you try to do to help work on the ideas or issues that are important to you?
Well, I will do what I've been doing in the past few years. I believe that the ex-mayor and the mayor, if you will, need to belong and participate in every group that we have here. The champs, the art society, the old church that needs to repair, things like that. And I've done that. So I belong to everyone, and I would continue to work with that. And I would do something with the Historical Society. I've also pledged my support, win or not, to the Corrales Historical Society and to the Art Society of the Village of Corrales.
Thank you. Dr. Fahey.
Well, I would work to preserve and protect the quality of life here in the village by whatever measure is needed, whether it's contributing to various and sundry organizations or whether it's contributing to development of different projects here in the village.
Thank you. And this next question may be related. And we'll start with you, Dr. Fahey. As a citizen, what have you done that impacted or made a difference in our community or in your community? Sorry.
I participated in village government for 12 years. I think that during that period of time, we were able to, although it's probably not the best sewer line in the world, we did get a septic system under pressure down the Corrales Road, which will help a number of areas, including the commercial area. I was able to get rid of a lot of stop signs on Loma Larga. Those didn't seem to be real big issues at the time, but it sure took a load off of Corrales Road.
Thank you. Mr. Kanan.
We have a sign and it's on license plates. It says Coralis is the horse capital of the state of New Mexico. I believe in that. I have horses and I've had them for years. And I think that we should continue our continual support of the rural and agricultural areas in the village of Corrales. I've done that, and I can contribute to those areas the best I can. Here again, I think that the fact that I support the community agencies and groups that are around are important, and I continue to do that too.
Thank you.
Well, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that I put in Loma Larga myself, not myself, but with a lot of other people's help. But I was the instigator of that, and I think that's a good aspect of the village of Corrales. We only have two ways in and out right now, and that's one of them, the major ones.
Thank you. And the next question, and we'll start with you first, Mr. Kanan. Question. What are strategies you would use to include more community participation in village government operations?
I would probably, well, I would be available most of the time to anybody that wants to visit with me in connection with what they need, what their needs are in the village of Corrales. And I think that we need to include those, we need to establish a public policy that will include public input, if you will. And I would do that. I don't know as if I understand the question correctly, totally, but we need to be transparent. Everything is up front. And one of my counselors, Marilyn Hill was her name, not counselor, but administrators, she said, I always know where Mayor Kanan stands. I never have to worry about it. He's right up front. He tells it like it is, and I intend to continue to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Fahey. I mean, Dr. Fahey, sorry.
I would try to recruit young people from various organizations, whether it be from the library, whether it be participating at the rec center, to try to get more of the young people involved in our village. I think there's just a bunch of older people who are now seem to be running the show too much. I'd like to see a much more diversity here in the village, young and old, but more young actually. How to do that? You just have to go out and recruit. Everybody you meet, you ask them if they're interested in government. You ask them if they'd like to run for office. You try to whet their appetites for something like that. That would be my focus. And that's just a one-to-one thing. That's perhaps we could actually put out ads in the paper and say, hey, are you interested in being on this committee? I mean, there's all kinds of ways you could try to get people involved. But I think that's very important. The involvement in the community by the young people.
Thank you. And this will be the last question before we go to closing statements. Let me see, which one do I want to ask? And we'll start with you, Dr. Fahey. When you hear about something of concern in the village, such as nuisance properties, what steps would you take to see that this concern is resolved?
Well, the first thing you do is collect information. So you have to see exactly what is occurring. We have an ordinance enforcement officer who can actually go out and collect the data, collect the information. More than often, they can probably handle it themselves. If not, then certainly the chief executive officer could inquire and see what the whole story is. Because many times it's a perception issue and not necessarily that one person is doing something wrong to another person. It's just the way it's perceived by the two parties. So you try to calm the waters, so to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan?
I think that every situation that's brought to my attention should be thoroughly investigated, and we'll take a look at it and see what we can do to assist, if you will. That's what we're here for. We're to assist the community in what their problems might be. And if we can do that, I think that's what we need to do, is to provide the community. As a matter of fact, it's like going back to the police department and community affairs. I think that we need to, if we see a problem, we need to go and check it out and see what the problem is. If somebody's, we need to visit with people, and that's a communication, if you will.
Thank you. And so that concludes the question and answer portion of the forum for tonight. And we'll go to your closing statements, and each one of you will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement, and we will begin with you, Mr. Keenan.
I've heard a lot of input, not a lot, but some input from various people, citizens of the village of Corrales. I think Coralis is drifting toward a suburban area, suburban of Rio Rancho or Albuquerque. I'm going to stop that. I'm going to correct that belief, because we are not going to do that. I've had a record of accomplishments. I mentioned before that I was the one that instigated to put in Loma Larga. I moved the county line so all of Corrales could be in Sandoval County. I did that almost by myself, if you will. I didn't conduct the consult with the council on that one, because I was scared that they might interfere with the progress on that. But that was a major accomplishment we had. We got to continue with the values of the village of Corrales. Density is a big one. Fire and police protection is up front. So we're going to do that, and you can depend on me to support those areas to benefit the village of Corrales.
Thank you so much. Dr. Fahey.
I would certainly like to thank the League of Women Voters once again, and also all those who have participated in this forum. Change is the only constant. Changes will occur in Corrales. Changes already have occurred. All of us need to work together in a collaborative effort to make certain that those changes are consistent with our past, our values, and what we love about Corrales. Vote for me for Mayor of Corrales. We will work together to do what is best for the village as we move forward. We need to be positive, optimistic, and inclusive. This is our village. Vote for me, Jim Fahey, for Mayor of Corrales.
Thank you so much. And at this point in time, I'd like everyone in the audience to give a virtual round of applause to our two candidates for mayor, Jim F. Fahey Jr., is that correct? And Gary Keenan. Thank you so much for participating. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and so we can get the council candidates on the screen as panelists, and we will start the council portion of the forum in about 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
council candidates, you should have had a pop-up on your screen from me to join as a panelist. If you would please click that, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have our 5 candidates for council. So if our timekeeper is ready, Cheryl, are you ready?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So we'll go ahead and start with the council portion of the candidate forum. And I'm going to give a quick refresher of the rules for those of you who dozed off during my lengthy statement at the beginning. The candidates will have 90 seconds to make their opening remarks. They will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question. Repeating a question counts against your time allotted for a response. And there will be no debating or rebuttals allowed. And then at the end of the questions, We will have 90 seconds for each one of you to give your closing statement. And for the audience, just a reminder that candidate Cora France was unable to attend today, but we have the other 5 candidates for council, so we're proceeding. Keep an eye on the timekeeper, and again, stop when she holds up the stop sign. If you run over your time, I will stop you. And before the forum, the candidates drew numbers, and council candidate Mr. Dilts, I'm sorry, let me get your full name. Jonathan A. Andy Dilts will go first. So Mr. Dilts, you have 90 seconds to make your opening statement, please.
Thank you. I'm Jonathan Dilts. I've been a Corrales resident for approximately 7 years. We've had owned a horse as a therapy horse for my oldest daughter in Corrales for 13 years. I'm a 30 plus year career electrical engineer, currently working at Sandia, master's and bachelor's in electrical engineering. As a team lead in engineering design, I solicit needs and opinions from others. I weigh all those needs based on the facts and figures presented to me. And that's my intention as counselor, is to solicit input from my constituents and make a balanced decision. Not going to make everybody happy all the time. My previous public service is foster care. We were a foster family for over 10 years with over 80 children through our home. We've adopted 3, 2 of which are special needs. So we have a heart to serve the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Mr. Eichhorst, Courtney Eichhorst. 90 seconds, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity tonight. This is exciting for me. My name is Courtney Eichhorst. I am running for candidate for Village Council District 4. I was born in the village in 1976. My mother was born here in 1952. My grandpa moved here in 1947, and we moved in with my wife's grandpa in the village to take care of him about 15 years ago now. Coralis is in my blood. I was born and raised swimming in the acequias, swimming in the rivers. It's something I love and something that I appreciate. I was in 4-H here in the village as a young man. My 2 boys were raised here in the village, and they were in 4-H showing steers and lambs and hogs. I value what the village means. I value how precious it is and how precious the bosque is. One of my main goals here is the bosque, irrigation, water quality conservation. I am actually the business manager for UA Local 412 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union in the state. And I am the president for New Mexico Building and Construction Trades Council. So I deal with the legislature on a daily basis. I deal with state and federal issues all the time. And now it's time to come home to the village and help where I belong. So thank you guys. I appreciate this evening's opportunities.
Thank you. And next up is candidate M. Lawler Mel Knight. Ms. Knight.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this Zoom meeting. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting the Zoom meeting tonight. I hope by answering some of your questions that you can get to know me and understand my points of view on critical issues facing Corrales. Let me make one point very clear. I am not, and I repeat, not for growing commercial cannabis in residential areas. My opponent and his friends want you to believe that I am in favor of growing cannabis in residential areas. My opponent even put this on his flyer, but it's not true. I am not for growing commercial cannabis in residential areas. I lived in Corrales for many years and have donated my time and hard work on committees and boards for the last 37 years. I've managed to raise a family, work full-time, and give back to my community. For the last 4 years, I've been privileged to be your District 3 representative on the council. And during this time, I have, along with my fellow councilors, voted on farmland preservation projects, bosque initiatives, and money for fire and police departments. Our first responders continue to need our support to keep Corrales the safest place to live in New Mexico. During the last 4 years, the counselors and I have had to make some very difficult and unpopular decisions on casitas, Airbnbs, and the roads. We base our decisions on our ordinances and our comprehensive plan. When I think about Corrales, okay.
Thank you. The next candidate for their opening remarks will be John P. Alsobrook II. Mr. Alsobrook.
Thank you, Mary, and everybody else at the League of Women Voters for hosting this. Some of you know me, some of you don't, and so I think fundamentally, why should you elect me? Well, I have 13 years of direct municipal governance experience, and I approach every issue with a balance and reason. I think the best plans and solutions are found by balancing all of the voices that come to the table and making sure that there's reason, thought, analysis that informs those discussions. My role I see as a communicator. It's a two-way road, and I'm a conduit for information, keeping constituents informed about issues that may affect them or their properties, their lives, and at the same time receiving your input and guidance and opinions on those same issues. My contact email and phone number have always been publicly available when I held office. I believe in transparency in government. I work at that strenuously. I previously successfully filed and pursued an Open Meetings Act violation of a previous administration, which I'm particularly proud of. My concerns, you've heard a lot of concerns from during the mayoral discussions. Comprehensive plan of development is a really critical one. So many things stem from that. And I also believe we need to review the decision we made 16 years ago to put in 6 districts in the village of Corrales. Sometimes we don't have enough candidates. And I think that's a healthy internal look at the decisions we made.
Thank you. And our last candidate to make his his opening remarks, I'm sorry, is Rick S. Miera. Mr. Miera.
Good evening. I'm a lifelong resident of New Mexico. My parents and family are from Algodones, where we have resided for 12 generations. I grew up in the North Valley, received my degrees in business administration and urban development at the University of Albuquerque. I began working at the University of New Mexico Mental Health Center and retired from the Department of Family Psychiatry at the University of New Mexico. During this time, I was privileged to be elected to the House of Representatives for 24 years, where I chaired the Education Committee for 18 years. When I retired from the legislature, I was the majority floor leader. Upon my retirement, I continued to serve as a consultant for education and mental health related committees and boards throughout New Mexico and internationally. I am proud to be a Colareño, residing in District 1 with my wife, Bernadette. I grew up in Algodones, where I still own my property and where I have learned from my childhood the advantages and beauty of a small village and close relations with family, friends, and neighbors. I understand the rural lifestyle, worked it, know it, and agriculturally needs especially water. Through my life, I have worked assuring that communities are involved in the decision-making process. I'm honored to be the District 1 candidate for Village Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will start our first question with Mr. Eichhorst. And this is a question, 90 seconds for you and all of the candidates. What is your #1 priority for Corrales, and how do you plan to approach it?
Okay, thank you for that. My #1 priority, I guess, growing up here, it's something that resonates with me. It's safety for everyone in the village. Our kids, we need to focus on, we do have kids in the village and they are blessed to be here. And it's been a huge thing for them to actually get to live here and grow up here and have a rural community that helps them out. And seniors. I've been around an aging community here in the village for a long time, and I think that is something we need to focus on. Our kids, thank goodness for Corrales Elementary. My sister started school there when it was Sandoval Elementary. And I actually went to Corrales. My wife went to Corrales. Everybody in my family did. And it means a lot to me. So I think we need to focus on our kids, our seniors, our acequia, the water conservation, and water quality.
Thank you. And the next candidate is Ms. Knight.
Yeah, having to pick one priority is tough because there's so many needs in the village. But I think what's really important is, and the mayoral candidates brought it up, is the density issue. I am still in favor of the 1 and 2 acre density rules here in ordinances. But I think we do need to address in the commercial zone, senior housing. I also think it's very important that we look at our wastewater system. We only have one line going down Corrales Road right now. If something happens to that line, the school, the businesses, homes are impacted. So I think we need to have at least 1 or 2 more wastewater lines that can help with, the wastewater problem in the dense areas of population. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next candidate, Mr. Alsobrook.
You're muted. You're
Please
muted.
unmute yourself.
Thank you. I saw that. Oh, well, there go a few seconds. I think the number one issue is really revisiting and revamping our comprehensive plan of development. It sounds like a bureaucratic exercise and another big giant tome that nobody reads, but it really is the guiding document that helps us figure out what laws to change, what new laws to create, what to make the priorities for our spending. It's a reflection of the wants and needs for our village and preserving our village character. Small things such as when AT&T wanted to put in the cell tower in Loma Larga, we fought them as best we could, but our comprehensive plan didn't have all the right wordings in it for protecting our view shed. So we couldn't invoke, protecting the marvelous view of the Sandias as a reason for them to cite it elsewhere. So these are the sorts of things that go in it. Preservation of the bosque, the housing density, everything stems from what we write and create in that plan. And I'd like to see us bring it back to the table. It's been a good solid decade, and it needs review and bringing up to date.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you very much. I think the number one issue for me is going to be preserving the Corrales tradition. I think we have a long, healthy tradition of making people feel like they're comfortable and welcome here. And because to me, and as noted in the other discussions earlier, is the neighborhoods. I believe that strong neighborhoods make strong communities. And because of that, I believe that we need to protect the rural village landscape. And the landscaping is more than just, we look at the water and the bosque and things of that nature, but the landscape is also that which we live around and we protect. And that's our children, our families, our schools, and particularly the water. And we will be talking about that all night long. But to me, the number one issue is preserving that tradition that we know as Corrales, that I've known as Corrales for all my life.
Thank you. Mr. Dilts.
Well, I think that one of the things that's most important to me, and is why we chose to make Corrales our home, is protecting the open space and the rural feel of the community. The 1 and 2 acre densities are a strong part of that. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I don't want to see that come to Corrales. Another thing that's important is protecting our water. as everybody knows, that's a big problem in the West, and we need to be looking towards the future and what we can do to preserve that. From my own experience building our house here recently, utility infrastructure is not great in Corrales, especially broadband access. We have very few choices and very poor performance. There's federal funding available for broadband expansion. We should pursue that to bring that to Corrales. And as we've seen over the last 2 years with kids being at home instead of in school, it's something that is needed. And I'm for preservation of the bosque and the other natural resources of the community.
Thank you. And the next question will start with Ms. Knight. This is a question for all of you. How will you communicate with citizens to keep them informed of what's going on the council and in the village? Ms. Knight, you go first.
Okay, I think it has been difficult to keep communications going with our citizens if they're not familiar with Zoom meetings or in the internet, text messaging, as well as emails. A lot of organizations in our village reach out to their members to help them communicate information. Like I've got probably 3 different organizations that I belong to talked about these forums tonight and how to get to the forums and how to send in questions. I also am around town a lot. You know, I go to the growers market. I go to, I'm a member of the VIV movie club. You know, there's lots of organizations here that people can join and foster new friends and new ideas. And I think that's helped me to expand my thoughts about people's needs. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Mr. Alsobrook.
The primary way I stay in touch with constituents is just by making my phone number and email available. As I mentioned before, I'm open to any opportunity to discuss anything on their mind. That includes, meeting with them one-on-one in their houses. A little more difficult now during the pandemic, but I am fully vaccinated, so I'm not too worried about that. I also regularly sat outside Frontier on the benches, and I invited folks to join me for coffee. We have a couple of new venues since the last time I was on the council, so I'd be happy to meet with folks in the Ex Novo Beer Garden to chat about things. But I really do try to make myself as available as possible and keep as flexible a schedule as I can to accommodate what people are asking.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you for that question. You know, it's a brave new world, as we said many, many years ago, and that world involves the change that the young are accustomed to. So I reach out to the young here with this particular answer at this time. You know, I'm on Facebook, and I think what's more important is that when you ask a question, however you ask it, whether it's a text or an email, that you get answered. I think that is the communication. You can have the one way, or you can be the kind that says, I really am interested in what you have to say, so please call me and I will return those calls. Secondary to that is, I'm not afraid of the phone. In fact, I like the phone. I like people to give me a call. I like to be able to have a conversation about what their issues are and not be limited to whatever we can put on the text as the young ones are so used to. Some of us are a little bit older and we prefer getting telephone calls and making emails. I believe that is the way to get a hold of me, and that is the way that I would love to be able to have a conversation with you.
Thank you. Mr. Dilts.
Well, I think one of the things I've learned in this election process is mailers are fairly effective, and I think it would behoove the village to do more mailing of announcements to everyone. My parents are quite elderly. They are technophobic. They have a cell phone, they have a computer. They don't know how to text. They only frequently email. So my plan for my constituents would be that my phone number is available, my email is available. Another thing that has really shown us how we can communicate, maybe not as effectively as we would like in person, but these Zoom conferences that the village council has been doing, that we're doing right now. These are something that are easy to make use of, and inexpensive. I don't know if the village has to pay for that service, but certainly as a user, it's free to us. That's something that we can make better use of, and probably maybe more frequent updates to the village website if there are announcements needed.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, so with community outreach, I've heard it said that having your email out there, your phone out there, that's huge. That means a lot. And actually listen to the folks in Corrales means a lot. And I think we all need to do that. If any of us truly do care, we want to be open to our community and our neighbors. I mean, everybody in this village is my neighbor at the end of the day. I think the elementary school is one way we could get the word out there. I think mass text works a lot. I'm not extremely young, but we use mass text quite a bit where I work. Social media helps a ton. I know the village has some great social media apps and groups like the Rotary Club and whatnot. We've got some groups that can get the word out there quickly. And if anybody needs to know what's going on, there's a lot of us that are always willing to talk to each other, and a lot of us know each other, and it's an easy way to reach out and talk to each other. So I think we need to rely on each other. We need to rely on our neighbors. We need to rely on all the groups that coincide here in Corrales and that help each other out and that actually care. So that would be one of my best ideas is let's reach out to each other and let's make sure we're all part of the same team.
Thank you. The next question for all of you will still be 90 seconds. And this is a question. The governing body has voted to restrict commercial cannabis growing operations away from residential areas. In your opinion, where is the appropriate location for commercial cannabis growing operations? And we will start with Mr. Alsabrook.
Well, so as you mentioned, and as the mayoral candidates mentioned, right now it's restricted out of A1 and A2, so that leaves the commercial zone. That's what we've got, and that's what new producers will have to go with. It's of course it's not immutable. It's a law that we created. It's a law that we can modify. If, for instance, sometime in the future there were a different zone created for this type of what's perceived as a nuisance crop, it's really a difficult topic for us as a village, even as a state, because this is still a federally banned product. So that restricts banking and funds for the growers. It puts us at odds with the federal government. And so all of that comes into play in just the small municipal decisions we make. But I think for now, we go with what's written. If we want to look at creating special zones, that's something that would be open for discussion and input from everybody in the village. But for now, most Corraleños have made it clear that they view this as a nuisance crop. I think I'm almost out of time. We do have to look for unintended consequences, though, by singling out one single type of crop in a right to grow state and in an agricultural village. So we need to keep our eyes open the whole time.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Miera.
Thank you. there's no doubt that the only place you can put it in the commercial zone, and I think that's pretty much up to the council to decide where those commercial zones are. We're going to expand them, or if we're going to be able to decide even how those uses are made with the amount of water that is being taken to provide for those crops. We're just going to have to make it a point to say, not in Corrales, but if it's going to be here, it's going to be a situation where the council makes a small place, but only in commercial areas and not expanding commercial areas for that particular use. Make it unattractive and they won't come.
Thank you. Mr. Dilts.
So the village council, of course, enacted a ban in the A1 and A2 zoning areas. That is what many people of Corrales asked for. We need to respect that as long as possible. So that leaves it to the commercial zone areas. We need to keep close watch on what happens with state and federal laws regarding cannabis production, as that may change what the village is allowed to do in the future. But I think for now, people don't want that next door to them. It's not the same as a typical farm product. My family had a farm in central Illinois. They would not have farmed cannabis. It's not the same as a typical agricultural crop, and that's why people didn't want it. It also uses a lot of water, and we have that, and that's a resource issue in Corrales and the entire state. So, and any changes to the recent legislation needs to be very carefully weighed, and I would be mostly opposed to it. I would have to be convinced that it's a good thing for Corrales to make any change.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, thank you for that. I am going to echo, we've had some great answers. And the one thing that we all understand is planning and zoning has done their job for years. And we know there's only so many commercial areas in the village. And it can be grown in the commercial areas as previously stated. But as far as being my neighbor, I don't think I would want it either. I do have an issue with the amount of water, whether it's surface water or underground water, that could be taken. So anything that's zoned A1, I agree. It doesn't belong. It's something that could be changed in the future, of course. I don't think that's, I don't want my neighbor zoned A1. I don't want them growing it necessarily. I don't think that the odor is pleasant for myself or my family. But if you're in a commercial zoned area in the village and it is approved to grow there, then you have the right to do so. But I do worry about our irrigation. I do worry about our water sources here in the village. They have become limited over the years. And that's always one of the things I worry about is our farmers now rely on their water. So do we want a ton of new farms coming into the village just because we have water? I'm not sure about that, but it's something we could dang sure do a better job researching and make sure we listen to planning and zoning.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Thank you. On January 4th, this issue was brought up to the council, and it was decided that growing cannabis commercially was going to be banned in residential 1 and 2 zones. I don't have any problem with that. Everyone on the council was worried about the water usage, the lights that would be used for, patrolling these areas, fences, crime, the smell, all of these were addressed, and every one of the counselors were concerned about this. We didn't go into this with our eyes closed. We just wanted to make the best decision for the village. I think at this point, it's a moot point in residential A1 and 2s, and that it can only be grown in commercial areas.
Thank you. And the next question for all of you will also be 90 seconds. Do you believe Coralis is a safe place to raise a family? Would you propose any changes to village administration and/or the police and fire department to help ensure public safety. And we will start with Mr. Miera.
Thank you. By all means, Corrales is a safe place. There's just no doubt that it has set its place in history, and I say that because it's recent history. We all know that Corrales has already been labeled as the safest place to live. Our job being in the village council is to make sure that it remains that way by properly funding the police department and giving that police department the support that it needs once it makes the decisions that they do, and they make them on a daily basis. So they need our support. And with the fire department, that too, not only providing the kinds of equipment that they have, but that we also value what it is that they do and what they do on a regular basis. How you continue to do that is one of the things I started with my questions is that, you know, we have safe neighborhoods, and if people are talking with one another, neighborhoods are communicating with one another, we know one another, that becomes a safer place, and the word gets out that everybody knows each other, and that is by far the best way to keep our neighborhoods safe and allowing people that are going to be moving into us that they are welcomed here, and that because of that welcoming, there's just no doubt that we're going to have a better place to live and for the children as well.
Thank you. Mr. Dilts.
Corrales is a very safe place. That's one of the reasons that we chose to make this our home. We've had numerous interactions with the police in our time here. We had a foster child that we planned to adopt that was special needs, died in our home before her adoption was finalized. The police and medical services were here to help us through that, and were phenomenal. My property has been vandalized many times, and it's been reported to the police. They have always been very positive in their support of my family in that. So they're doing a great job. I'm not aware that they have a funding shortfall, but anything we can do to improve what they're doing. And there is some village pay increases coming. I think those are all positive things. I think one of the things that we probably need to be anticipating is the population of Corrales is aging. We may need to look at improving emergency response support for elderly people.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, thank you for this question. I guess being raised here, I understand how safe Corrales is. And my mom's house, I don't think any of the doors on the house actually lock. I have never locked the doors on my house. My wife's grandpa moved here in the 60s, and I don't think grandpa even had keys for his house. So we know how safe Corrales is. We have the best fire department in the state. We've got one of the best police departments in the state. If there's some funding that needs to be increased, of course, we should do that as a village. We rely on them. We've definitely had the ability to call the fire department whenever somebody in the family has fallen and broken their hip or has passed away. Anytime anything happens, our fire department is the best thing I've seen since I was a kid. And I do miss the fact that we used to have some get-togethers in the village when I was young, like the Father's Day concerts where we raised money for the police and the fire department. And those were the most fun concerts in the world, and it allowed all the villagers to get together. And we made sure our fire department was funded, and we made sure our police department was funded, and they do a phenomenal job. I wouldn't trade Corrales for anything, and I'm not planning on locking my doors anytime in the near future.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
We have the greatest fire department and police department of any municipality in the state of New Mexico. These guys are so approachable. They're around in the community. They're friendly. They're attentive. We need to make sure that they're funded and trained correctly, that any new technology to keep them safe is available, that we get them. You know, our police and fire department put on an outdoor adventure day before COVID hit. And they had like 150 kids fishing at Liam's Pond. They were doing activities where they were shooting with bows and throwing axes. And it was just wonderful for the kids. And I think for most of our adults that, again, they're very approachable people. I mean, Tanya has done an unbelievable job getting the vaccines out, and I just can't say enough about their ability to connect with people, and they really love their job, and it shows through the way they work.
Thank you. The next question will also be 90 seconds.
Oh, I didn't get a chance, Mary. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
I'm
I didn't get a chance to respond.
Sorry. Please, Mr. Alsterbrook. Yeah, I do see I didn't mark you off. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, Corrales is one of the safest municipalities in the state. My kids used to walk to the library along the ditch, and I never worried about them having any problems. Of course, they moved out of the house now, but one of the things that makes it this way is we can just totally trust our fire staff and our police staff. And if if Chief Manager Copper were to say that, gee, wouldn't it be great to have a police aid program where there might be some younger people available who get extra training and can fill some roles that would increase safety? I'd be all for that, but I'd certainly do it in consultation with him. The police and fire are a huge part of our village budget, and if every dime that we can spare an extra to give them is well worth it. The other thing that contributes to all of our safety here is our sense of identity as Coraleños. We need to preserve that. We need to make sure that all of us are invested in preserving this way of life that we love here. So it's a community and the safety organizations working hand in hand, and I think we can do well at that and keep it this way.
Great, thank you. I apologize, Mr. Alsterbrook again. Okay, the next question is, what do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects within the village? And we will start this question with Mr. Dilts.
Probably one of the biggest ones would be expansion of the Loma Larga fire hydrant system. That's been going on for a couple of years. It should be expanded for the length of Loma Larga. It's got easy access to supply from the water tower and is almost a no-brainer to continue that. The fire chief has done a great job in getting monies to do the work he's done, and we should let him continue. Other infrastructure, I'll be honest, I'm not real certain about that. I've heard a number of suggestions, such as sidewalks on Coralis Road. I think that's probably problematic because of right-of-way issues. The properties are very close to the road, so that would be a difficult thing to do. I would seek input from my constituents on what they think is important for the village and implement that. Some other things would be, again, utilities expansion to make needed utilities more readily available to all properties.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, this is a great question. One of the nice things about being the manager for the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union in the state is we run utilities all through the state, and we deal with the federal government, we deal with the state government, and right now, the amount of federal dollars available for all of us is just beyond what I've ever imagined. So I would love to see our broadband expanded here in the village. I do worry about our seniors. I do worry about our kids. I want to make sure everybody has broadband necessary to do their work, to do their school. I am concerned with our septic in the village. That is something that I deal with State Construction Industries Division on a daily basis. And I know what needs to happen here. Water is an issue. Water is life. And it's something we all need to preserve. And it's something I've worked with for years to make sure we preserve it. And I want to make sure if we have an area that needs municipal water, that's something that's coming in the near future. Do we need to make sure municipal water and municipal sewer is something for the villagers? We need to make sure we can protect our village and protect everyone who lives here and offer the best utilities possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Yeah, I brought it up once before about the wastewater lines. I think that we need to have one or two more wastewater lines going into the highly dense populated areas. I know the Interior Drain Committee talked about teaming up with our public works people and maybe addressing that on the eastern side of Corrales Road. Broadband is very important. Depending where you are in the village, your cell phone is either, you might have to step outside or go to one part of your garage to have a good cell phone call. Another thing I think is really important is looking at putting underground utilities on Corrales Road. There's been people have talked to me, not just my constituents, but other people in Corrales about the dangers of having all those wires and being so close to the bosque. So that would be another, I think, thing to look at in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alsobrook.
I'm going to talk about infrastructure that's a little different. It's a bit of a mobile infrastructure. It's something that I worked on previously, and that is providing some alternate transit and transport for people in the village, whether that's to go out to Sprouts or whether that's to go out to Cottonwood or wherever the place may be. We could address a few things that way, both the needs of the Corraleños as well as helping to bolster our efforts at keeping the village green. This is something when I was on the Rio Grande Transit District, I obtained a bus free for the village, a multi-passenger bus, not a van. And that was in good running condition, it's perfect. We could have started it then, but the administration in place then chose to just park it. And that just went away. I'd like to see us work towards that. We were the second municipality in the state to put all of our municipal buildings on solar power. I think we can be a little more forward looking towards serving how we move around in our immediate areas.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you. Sewers. I'm speaking now to my constituents in District 1. We know them as septic tanks, and so therefore I think that's really important. The fact that at least in our neck of the woods out here, we really have a whole lot of septic tanks, which of course means we were talking about water. So we'd love to be able to have that kind of conversation, but I think what's most important is protecting what we have right now and making sure that it doesn't get wilted away with unnecessary uses. So the protection of the water is important. In a funny sort of way, talking about what we need right now in capital improvements is the plan. We need to start planning now for what's going to be happening in the next 10 years. And you do that by getting the funds that are available. The legislature has a variety of different ways of getting funds, and we can bring them to the small communities, to the villages such as Corrales. And we need to be able to interact with them and make sure that those funds come our way. So we're not just getting planning in the normal sense that we're paying for it, but we're getting the state to pay for some of those plans. And that's a new, not a new idea, but it's something new to us and we should pursue it.
Thank you. So our next question will be this, 90 seconds for your answers. An increasing number of Corrales' senior residents find it difficult to maintain their home in the village, but treasure the Corrales lifestyle and want to remain there. Should the village allow clusters of senior housing to be constructed within the village? And if so, where? And we will start that question with Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, thank you for that. So I appreciate all the seniors that live in the village. When I was a kid, that's who I got to hang out with here in the village, was a lot of folks that were over 65, and they're the ones that taught me the values that I still hold dear today. I do want them to be able to stay in the village. I do want them to be able to live here. My concern is those clusters, do they follow the planning and zoning guidelines? Do they follow state and or federal guidelines? One of my biggest concerns is we need to make sure we follow all construction industries divisions guidelines. And if we're not following those, we have issues. So in the commercial zones in Corrales, we have the ability to have more restrooms. This is something I think as a council we could look at, and it's something we could discuss going forward. I definitely think I want all the seniors that want to be here to be able to stay here, but we need to make sure we follow the rules at the same time and not overwhelm our septic systems and our domestic well systems. So something we could definitely look at and come together as a group and come up with a solution.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Yeah, we were presented by a gentleman an idea for senior housing in the commercial zone that would hook up to the wastewater system that's down Corrales Road. And he talked about having, it's on 2 acres, but he would still have to follow the rules and the ordinances of the 35% of the property be only addressed the buildings on 35% of the property, just like it would be a home on an acre. So there are ways, I think, to help the seniors to stay in Corrales. They're the ones who put in all the effort at the beginning to make Corrales the way it is, so we all enjoy it. It is tough to work on an acre when you're older. So I think that's an option. I think we need to be thoughtful in how we do it, but I think we should at least look at it and address it with good faith. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alsobrook.
I do think we need to consider this type of housing so that it's available for all the Corraleños as we age. I hope to be a senior citizen here in the not too distant future. But I don't think it should be just in one area. I think it's better to have it distributed and to take it under advisement and consider case by case applications. Almost a decade ago, I think we approved senior living and assisted living facility on the Adventist property. And that fell through just because the developers were a little inexperienced with federal funding and how to gain favor with that checkbook. But I think we learned a lesson there that we need it and we can consider it. I think the case in point on Corrales Road right now is, there are existing rules to try to follow. I think it does need to be a case by case basis. That will maintain the character and flavor of Corrales. If we have a section of half a square mile that is just, that's where all the old folks live, that's not going to serve us well. That's not what we want to do.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you very much. We got to be very, very careful with this because if we change the zoning in such a manner that we're going to allow multiple, residential 3 type of zoning where we can have multiple people living in smaller areas. And what happens when that business just goes afoot? So then we now have a large area where they have apartments now, and because the seniors are no longer living in there, we got to be very careful how we address that and say this is a senior housing. And what happens when it doesn't work out that way? 10, 15 years from now, I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen too much. I do want the seniors to be living in Corrales because they paid for everything, as was mentioned before. But on the other hand, We can't stop people from coming from outside of Corrales, moving in here to the best place that you could possibly live. There's an awful lot of zoning requirements that we have to take into consideration here, but there's just no doubt in my mind that the seniors need some housing, and it's up to us in the village council to be able to work through those issues very, very carefully and make sure that in the very end, that's what's best for Corrales, especially when it comes to the use of water and building codes.
Thank you. Our next question, also 90 seconds for answers.
Mary, you didn't give me an opportunity.
I didn't? Well, I apologize. Well, please go
That's
ahead.
okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm delirious.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, it's been a long day already. I think this is a little more complex issue than just providing cluster housing for seniors. My parents are in their mid-80s. They're still trying to live independently. I look at, and this is probably a long-term village planning issue. We don't have nearby medical facilities for seniors. We don't have terribly nearby groceries and other shopping that are readily accessible in the village. So it's not just a matter of the cluster housing, and we have existing zoning that prevent that. So it would have to be in the commercial district without making changes to zoning. I have a hard time with making special zoning agreements to allow for cluster housing where it's not previously allowed. That ends up backfiring later when other people want special zoning for other things. So I do want to support our seniors, and I'm open for evaluating what that may look like, but I think it's being oversimplified as just a housing issue.
Thank you. I apologize to you, Mr. Dilts. I have 3 more candidates to forget before we're end of the evening. Again, our next question will be 90 seconds, and it is this. Do you think the village should purchase the 3-acre Gonzalez property on Corrales Road? And if so, for what purpose? Or do you think it should be left available for a commercial use? And we will start with Ms. Knight.
Yes, I hope that the village purchases the Gonzalez property. It's been an issue for 4 years since I've been on the council, and many different organizations want the village to purchase that. It could be lots of different things. It would be a great connector to the library, to Corrales Road, back to the first ditch, over to the rec center. There could be numerous things there. There could be a garden, a children's garden. There could be master gardeners in there. There could be a tree farm. There could be just a butterfly garden. I mean, it has so many things it can be. And I'm sure if the village does pursue that and purchase it, I'm sure people will have lots of great ideas, creative ideas to use that property. But again, I think it's a huge issue as a connector for other things in the village, for riding, for cyclists, walkers. It would connect Corrales Road with so many things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alsabrook.
I do think it's worthwhile for us to pursue purchasing that parcel. I think as part of that discussion, we need to be sure that we develop a very clear plan with our expectations of, what the goals will be, whether it's, connectivity, whether it's as a demonstration farm, whether it's, some parts of it to be leased out to other farmers. As long as we have that crisp and clear in mind, then I think we're good to go with purchasing that. This is exactly the type of thing that will help preserve character of the village, rather than seeing another another 6-foot, red Colorado metal fence go up or something like that. That's not, takes away from the village character.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you. You know, gems like this don't come very often, and we tend to think that this is going to come and go, and another one will come along. It won't, and so we have to take a chance to find the needed resources to purchase this piece of property. We've talked about this before, that we have to use our plan that says, what are we going to use it? What's our comprehensive plan? It's 2009 is the last time we did that. If you can imagine where we would have been in 2009, have this opportunity come for us then, that would have been part of the plan. And so I think we need to put that plan in now as soon as possible, and don't let us lose the opportunity to grab this piece of property. It's not, things like this don't happen very often. Let's utilize it now.
Thank you. Mr. Dilts.
Well, this seems like one of those once in a lifetime opportunities that is really too good to pass up. It's right in the heart of the village. It's right near existing village infrastructure, the library, the ditch path. It just seems like even if we don't immediately know what we're going to do with it, it seems like something that we need to move on so that it isn't lost for potential future use. I like the idea of a demonstration farm or something like that for part of it, and certainly a connector to other village features is also great. And it needs to be incorporated into a village plan for what the next decade or two look like in the village.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, thank you for that. So I do think the village should purchase that 3 acres. That actually adjoins some property that the village already owns, which connects the Acequia all the way to Corrales Road. That property is used right now. And it could be something that we could look forward to as, like was mentioned earlier, pedestrians, horse riders, cyclists, our kids getting to and from the library, our equestrian folks getting to and from the library off the Acequia. I think this means a lot. One of the things I would love to see and I could help with is I have literally irrigated off that Acequia my entire life. And this is something we could work with our younger group. How do we keep the kids connected to Corrales? We could help them. Our public works group here in the village, most of them have also irrigated off the Acequia their entire life. So as a group, a lot of us could get together and we could teach these young kids how important water actually is and how important flood irrigation is and what crops can be grown in the village successfully. There was a lot of money spent on the Gonzalez farm to the west side of these 3 acres for trees and for irrigation. And I'd hate to lose that. I would love to conjoin Corrales Road all the way to the Acequia. That makes perfect sense to me.
Thank you. Our next question also will be 90 seconds for your responses. Should the village take over control and maintenance of Corrales Road from the State Department of Transportation? And if so, under what circumstances? And we will begin this one with Mr. Alsobrook.
This has been under discussion for quite a while. I actually do think there are benefits to us taking over ownership of the road. I think the biggest consideration, and I'm sure New Mexico DOT would be reasonably happy to wash their hands of it. But having said that, we do need to plan very carefully because that road is not the best engineered road in the world, and we will have to carefully maintain a fiscal fund for repairs. There are stretches that routinely have deep potholes forming every year. We've gotten a good agreement, at least that, we can go ahead and have our crews patch it. We don't have to wait for DOT. But that's the biggest concern I see is we need to be careful and look far enough ahead with our wallet to know that if we take it over, we can maintain it at least as well, or at least as poorly, depending on your view, as NMDOT has.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you. For the short time period, I don't think it's in our best interest to do that. We paved it just recently, as we all well know, and that'll last for some time. But I'm more concerned about what happens when we have to take something up and go underneath it and go to the sewer lines and things that are out there. We just can't afford it. And I worry about how that's going to affect it. On the other hand, I think we can make some agreements. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we can do some long-term planning with regards to how that's going to be utilized. And I think the state's in a position right now to be able to negotiate regarding how we take ownership of that piece of property with certain time limits, and that at the same time, we're also going to be getting some funding in return. But right now, I'm very worried about the cost that it's going to lead to us in our pocketbooks, and can we afford to maintain that road from one end to the other one, because we're not going to buy a little piece, we're going to have to buy it all. So I'm very concerned about that.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Dilts.
So I think it's a interesting proposition. I think I would be very concerned about the cost impact to the village to maintain that long term. It was just resurfaced, so there's no immediate needs, but obviously we all know how long roads last, and it's not as long as we hope for, and usually takes longer to get them redone than we like. I think obviously the village having control of the road is very advantageous, because I suspect that it took us a long time to get the state to do the work that was badly needed on it. But if we take it over, the state isn't going to cut our taxes to compensate us for it. So it becomes entirely Corralis's cost to bear, whereas now at least the state is paying for it. So I guess I don't feel real strongly either way. I think it's something that we need to establish a plan for and look at the benefit, the pluses and minuses, and especially the cost to the village to take it over.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, that is a very difficult question. I know the state DOT has deeper pockets than the village does. I know they don't care as much as the village does. So I am concerned if the village took over all the maintenance. As previously mentioned, it has been resurfaced, it has been worked on. And I think maybe there would be a way to work collaboratively with the state, where we can maintain parts and pieces, but the state continues to oversee it. I think the state would be amenable to that, and I think they would appreciate that since our crews work here and our crews know the roads so well, they would be able to maintain it better than the state would. But maybe at the same time, the state would be able to continue to fund it, continue to help us, and maybe that would be the best choice. I'm not sure, but I think it's definitely something we could look into and we could talk to the state about and come up with a solution.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Yeah, our Public Works Department does a great job on Loma Larga, and we do own Loma Larga. But I think, as everybody else talked about, that I think it would cost the village a lot of money for the upkeep. It'd be great if we could get into some kind of a partnership agreement with the state, as far as being able to do like spot checks on it and fill in holes and things when needed if the state couldn't get out here. But to take over the whole road, I think it would be too expensive. And as Courtney said, the state has deep pockets and we don't always. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will also be 90 seconds. Going to mix it up a little bit. Excuse me. Currently, Corrales has 6 village council districts. What are your thoughts about removing or consolidating districts? Or would you advocate keeping them as is right now? And we will start this question with Mr. Mieta.
I think that we should keep it as it is right now. You know, what's going on is that we have an opportunity to have a limited number of people that the council, is talking with and about in our constituency. Opening it up is gonna put it in a situation where we have a whole lot of door knocking to do, which I really like doing anyway. But the truth of the matter is, you know, I don't prefer having big, large districts. I prefer having the districts the way they are right now. And I think people feel more comfortable if they know who their counselor is and that they can get a hold of them. They don't live that far down the street. I think that's really important to kind of turn it into like 3 or so. I've watched that in other counties and so forth and so on. I think I prefer the way it is right now.
Thank you. Mr. Dilts.
Well, it'd be interesting to know where that question originated, or why that question originated. I don't think that reducing the size of the council would be beneficial. You need a certain number of minds to meet to develop a good plan for things. And so a smaller number of people on the council is fewer people to work together and develop a good plan for the community. Making it much larger, there might be something to said for a couple more people, but I don't know that that's really advantageous. 6 is a fairly good number for the size of the community. There's enough of us that people can get a hold of their counselor fairly easily, and we don't have so many constituents that we can't talk to them. So I think 6 is actually a fairly good moderate number for the community.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Yeah, back in the 80s, I think, they had it wasn't in districts. There were just 6 council people and they were from all over the village. I think when you have districting, you get more of a representation of what people want. I know District 3 goes from the Sandhills all the way down to Corrales Road. And so there's many different viewpoints there, which I think is good. And, you know, I think most council people, I get calls all the time from people who don't live in my district. And I say, I don't care where you live. What's the issue here? So it isn't just people in your district contacting you, but other people from the entire village. And I think that will remain the same no matter what. But I like the idea of districts just because I think it gives more representation to everyone, rather than just have maybe like 4 people from the north end or 3 people from just the south end.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst, did I skip you?
You have not gotten to me yet, so I guess it's my turn now.
Okay, I flip-flopped you and Ms. Knight. So you go
Sorry,
next.
Courtney.
Next, Mr.
That's
Eichhorst.
okay. You got this is great. So I think we should keep it as is. I like the 6 districts. I think it's extremely manageable. I think it's fair representation. I think it gives every mom and dad, every grandma and grandpa, it gives every citizen of Corrales the opportunity to talk to their counselor and express their issues and express their concerns. I think a lot of times our neighbors just want to talk to us. They don't necessarily have concerns and they don't necessarily have issues. It's nice for them to understand that they are part of the village and we do care and we're their neighbor. And they think it's pretty cool that somebody right down the road is there on their behalf and we're there to speak on their behalf. And I think that the districts aren't too big. They're a little confusing. If you look at some of the roads, it's definitely interesting, but Corrales is interesting and it's supposed to stay interesting. And I appreciate that fact. So great question.
Thank you. Mr. Alsobrook.
I think I differ with most of most of the other candidates here. At least I think we need to examine it a bit more formally. It is a good communication conduit. It is sort of give a nice informal village feel when someone can go down the road and talk to you about the issues. Someone who's so local that, you know, they see you every day driving by or over the fence. But as Mel noted, people do tend to talk to all the councilors. If there's an issue that's important, they know there are 6 votes, and they will talk to every single one of those people who are going to cast a vote. And I think it's worth looking at also, because too many times we've had one or none candidates running in any of the district councilors' office. And that doesn't serve anyone's good. That's not what we're here for. This is supposed to give us choices. And you know, when you have someone who at 4:55 p.m. on filing day decides that, you know, they think it's a travesty and they need to go file so that there can be at least a name on the ballot, you know, that's telling. One, it's telling that we have great people who are willing to step up and they'll fill the roles, and we all have that sense of shared duty. But I think it's worth looking at if a different structure, different number, you know, we could even easily pull down a different form of government if somebody wanted to, which, you know, a council administrator government that other towns have. I don't advocate that. What I advocate is we should take a good look at it.
Thank you. Our next question also will be 90-second answers. And the question you may recall from the mayoral forum. This is a question. Would you support seeking funding for the purchase of electric police cars? From whom might you seek this money? And we will start this with Mr. Dilts.
I guess I would wonder what the purpose of those leased cars was for. If it's to make transportation more accessible for community members, that would be a positive thing. Would need to be carefully managed. Electric cars aren't free. Certainly it could be a benefit to the community, but I think without a little more detail on what the plan and purpose for that project would be, it's hard to say I'm in favor of it. I'm not strictly opposed to it, but I think the costs need to be weighed against the benefits and who benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Oop, I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay. So I think we could definitely do some research into this. I think cost effectiveness would be a huge part. Would these vehicles be cost effective for the village? The nice thing is we're not a gigantic municipality. We're rather small land-wise. And I think electric vehicles could benefit the village if we had the charging stations and if we had all the infrastructure in place. So we would have to make sure what the cost would be to add that infrastructure, make sure what the cost effectiveness would be for the electric vehicles. I think it is the wave of the future. The zero emission vehicles, they're going to happen. We know we're looking at different vehicles around the nation and the state as far as zero emissions. And I applaud anyone who's trying to work towards zero emissions, but we need to make sure that it's effective for the village before we jump to any conclusions and go ahead and throw a whole bunch of money out there for something that's not going to work well. So I think it's a possibility, and I think it's something we definitely need to research. And I would love to see it personally. I think it'd be a lot of fun to see, and they could drive around. You know, the village is small enough, it would last, but something that we would need to research, and it's something that would happen possibly in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Yeah, I think we'd have to definitely do more research on the efficiency and the amount of money these vehicles would cost. Hopefully we'll be getting some charging stations because people already have electric cars, and when they come to the village, they're going to need to recharge those. It is a wave of the future, and I think we need to look at that. You know, I'm impressed that the city of Albuquerque has electric buses. that's a good thing. There's no emissions. And I think we all need to take care of our planet. So if the police force wants to give this a try with maybe 2 vehicles or whatever, just to see how it works, why not? Let's think out of the box once in a while and go for things that maybe is a little bit out of our comfort zone and see how it works.
Thank you. Mr. Alsabrook.
Yeah, I think looking at this would be, it's a great vision for the village to have. I mean, first and foremost, we have to make sure the chief thinks that the specifications of any electric vehicle are going to meet his needs. And I have no doubt that they can. If you've ever sat in a Tesla and pressed that ludicrous button, it snaps your neck back how fast those things can go. You know, the lifetime comes into play. And you know, certainly chief is great at finding external money for paying for our squad cars. For something like this, we might have to put in a dime to get back $1, but that would be well worth it. And funding opportunities for things like this come from the darndest places. When we were initially considering putting solar panels on all the municipal buildings, the Federal Department of Agriculture came in and just about gagged us, forcing $1 million loan down our throat, which we ultimately didn't take. But the Department of Agriculture wanted to pay us to help put solar panels on our buildings. So I'm sure other than state funding, there are lots of good federal sources we can get at too. And like I said, as long as the chief is on board and they satisfy the needs of him and his officers, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you very much. You know, when you seek funding, you find answers. And I think if the word just got out that Corrales was interested, you're going to be surprised how many different agencies, communities that already have them, et cetera, will come forth. And the answers will start appearing themselves, especially the answers that we will all care about. Is it financially stable, and more likely than anything else, are the vehicles going to be what Corrales really needs? I think it's more than a good idea. I think we should pursue it in terms of not putting out the money, but seeking the funding. And again, when you do that, amazing how the answers start to appear, and we become a place where that new type of funding that is available out there from wherever it comes from, agencies or whatever, will come back to us. And so I believe we should pursue this.
Thank you. And the next question, also 90 seconds, will be this. Do you believe that the village comprehensive plan needs updating? And if so, what steps would you take to update the plan and what needs to be addressed? And we will start this with Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, so I do think the village comprehensive plan needs updating. I think that's something that should be revisited on a regular basis. I think there should be something in place that says, you know, whether it's every year, whether it's every 2 years, whether it's every 3 years, 5 years, we need to revisit the comprehensive plan, because the state's ever changing, the village is ever changing, everything continues to change. So I think that it is something that needs to be updated. I think we could definitely look at what has worked well, what has not worked well. We need to make sure, one thing that was brought up earlier tonight was the fire department's ability for fire hydrants and the fire line up on Loma Larga. We need to make sure any future expansions included there. We need to make sure future plans for sanitary septic to a municipality, domestic water from a municipality. We need to make sure all that's included in the comprehensive plan and it's updated. And it's as close as we can get to 2022.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Yes, I do think the comprehensive plan needs to be updated. The last time it was looked at was in August of 2009. And I think the way it's laid out is very important. You know, it talks about the history of Corrales at the beginning, and it talks about the community profile, about how many people we have here, what ages they are, what incomes there are. And there's golden objectives. I think it also talks to fostering knowledge and appreciation for traditions in Corrales and what our history is. But we do need to look for the future, and we need to have a long-term plan. And it needs to be addressed soon because obviously the 2009 plan is out of date now. So we need to address it and look at it again.
Thank you. Mr. Alsabrook.
Yes. So, as we've all said many times here, it does need revisiting and reviewing. This is good timing for it. We've got fresh census data to help with our demographic section. And, this plan covers everything. It talks about our village character. It talks about what it is we want to preserve about it, what we like about it. It talks about agricultural use, open space, transportation, public works, parks and rec, trails, bosque. I mean, everything that gives us our feeling of love and identity with this village is described somewhere in that plan. And those are the things we need to revisit. I think the mechanism that we used last time was great. We had, a commission put together by interested folks in the communities with a couple of counselors participating. And then ultimately it came to the council for revisions before it was finally adopted. I think that process works great. There was a survey that went out, speaking of direct mailings that were mentioned earlier. There was a mailing that went out to every household. I believe it was in our trash bills, but it was still a survey. What do you love about Corrales? What do you like about the character? Those are the things that work. And I don't see any reason to change that, but what we need to do is modify the content so it keeps up with where we are and where we want to go.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you. That is the basis of all good planning for all villages and cities and so forth. And the reason I start with such strong words is that if we look back at what the 2009 plan said, that at the time it was their looking at 1970, it was 1,776 residents. And when they did that one, there was 7,334. They estimated in 2030 it'd be 10,126. You know what? We're already there. And because of that, I think it's so important to know that when the numbers that come out now with the census, that we're going to be looking at a new plan, but we're also, I think we need to look at a new way in which we get the data, because if we involve the citizens more with this new plan, which has to happen, I think the citizens will be more involved in, they had something to do with it. So therefore they had a fingerprint on the plan that we're going to be asking them to help us go future thinking. And because of that, we use that plan. Nothing more important than a plan, because that is the basis for any decisions the council will be making, and the planning and zoning, more importantly, as well.
Thank you. Mr. Dilts.
We certainly need to update the village plan. A lot of things rest on the vision of the future for the village. Infrastructure development. We've got a new cell tower going up on the Adventist property. There probably needs to be more. Where are those going to be? What are they going to look like? That's probably the likely way that we're going to get better broadband services in the village is through wireless. We've got, water conservation to consider. And we also need to make plans for preserving the history and culture of the village against future changes, future development. And without a plan, things happen by accident and usually not in a desirable way. So without a plan, we're kind of just ad hoc doing things. The Gonzalez property would be another thing that would be a great fit into what's the village going to look like in the future. So yes, definitely needs a redo, and we need the citizens' involvement, everybody's involvement in what that plan looks like. And the survey is a great way to get that.
Thank you. And we're coming to the end of the session. And so now it's time for the candidates to make their 90-second closing statements. And we will start closing statements with Ms. Knight. 90 seconds.
Okay, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on the Zoom meeting. I think Coralis has a bright future ahead. When I tell people I live in Coralis, I see envy in their eyes. We live in a special place, close to a big city, hospitals, freeways, grocery stores, and the Rio Grande. We have the advantage of living in a place where there's 1 and 2 acres of a minimum where we live. There's a special feeling when you drive down Corrales Road and see horses grazing in a large field, big trees, open spaces, smelling chilies roasting, and seeing kids playing at the playing soccer at the rec center. Let's see. I hope I've cleared up any questions about my intentions and how I see Coralis in the future. We have a lot of work to do in the next 4 years, maintenance and expansion of the rec center, the interior drain, making Corrales Road friendlier for pedestrians, equestrians, cyclists, and visitors, making sure we take care of our clean air and water. Please vote for me and help me to continue working with District 3 and that I started with 4 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alsabrook, 90 seconds.
Thanks. Well, certainly thanks, Mary, and thanks, Cheryl, for keeping us on time. And thanks, Aaron, for ironing everything out in the beginning. I really appreciate those efforts. As I think I've outlined for everybody, I really see the role of counselor as being a transparent communicator, being someone who can encourage and someone who can help move along ideas and someone who can make sure that the information that's used is adequate and reasonable and is discussed sometimes until everyone's sick of hearing it, but it's important to get everybody's voice out in the air so that we can get things on the table and move forward. That's what I see for Corrales, and I've done that before and I hope to do it for you again.
Thank you. Mr. Miera.
Thank you very much. You know, I more than value this community we call Corrales and its history, and my goal is to preserve it. No, we can't bring back the territorial house, but we can preserve the historic buildings and archaeological sites that we call Corrales and surround us. It's important that we preserve the Corrales tradition. It's valuable that we partner with all levels of government in the private sector to sustain our traditional village. It's extremely important that we understand that we're not going to be a bedroom community of Albuquerque or Rio Rancho. We are ourselves and we're going to take care of ourselves. And because of that, we have this opportunity as a village council to get the information from the constituents, make the decisions that we have to make and stick by them no matter what. I have a governing experience, as you probably noticed, in the community, and I really would like to bring that governing experience to Corrales when allowed to do so. As a professional career as a therapist, I've always understood the value of being a good listener, and that's what I bring to the village now if I'm elected. So I really appreciate and honor to be a candidate, but I ask for your vote. I humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you so much. Mr. Dilts.
I should note that my knowledge of Corrales actually goes back a bit further than when we got our first horse here. My wife and I had our wedding reception at Casa Vieja 20 years ago, and we were very disappointed when Chef White left, and are glad to see that facility is back in productive use. I think I've said it before. The things that attracted us to Corrales in the first place, I would like to protect the acreage, the density, the rural feel. Corrales is an incredibly unique community in that regard, in that we have this low density, we have a wealth of animals and farming in the community, and yet I could drive 5 minutes down the road and be at all the shopping and restaurants I could really hope for. So we're nestled in this little spot near a relatively large city, and all that brings. And unfortunately, what that also brings is expansion and increased density, and we need to be careful in planning the future for the village to maintain that and to keep that history and tradition of the village alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eichhorst.
Okay, thank you for that. I would like to thank all the panelists, and I would like to thank the League of Women Voters. I'm actually extremely excited with everyone who's running for village council. It's nice to see people care. It's nice to see people turned out. You know, my dad was a village councilor before we were incorporated, and he took pride in that. And it's nice to see how far we've come. It's nice to see what shape the village is in. I appreciate everything from the farms on both sides, the agricultural properties that continue to be used as agricultural. We are blessed to have a great school here in Corrales that continues to allow our kids to go to school here instead of having to leave the village to go to elementary school. We've got the best fire department. We've got the best police department. We're lucky. We're extremely blessed, and we're extremely lucky to have what we have. And I want to make sure that however this goes, I mean, of course, I think it's time for me to serve my community more than I already do. But I'm excited. I'm grateful for everyone that's here. And I think the one thing we could do is make sure to protect the integrity of the village is let's reach out to the communities around us. Let's make sure Rio Rancho understands where we are. Let's make sure Albuquerque understands where we are and the state. And the nice thing is I have a close relationship with the Gov and Mayor Keller and Mayor Hall. So I think we could do a lot of good here for the village. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. So that wraps up the candidate portion of the forum. I'll make a few brief closing remarks. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico, we thank the audience for your participation and listening tonight. An informed and effective democracy needs you all. Don't forget to check out vote411.org. It's a great resource. Thank you to Aaron Julien for being our host and tech master and making sure this Zoom forum worked. And also to the community members who helped the League with the logistics. I also offer a huge thank you to our timekeeper extraordinaire, Cheryl Haker, and our question reviewers, Karen and Steve Wentworth. All three of these League members are responsible for making this forum successful, and I appreciate them and their efforts very much. And finally, I thank the candidates, not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. It is at the local level that democracy really begins. Thank you all for coming tonight. And remember, we will present another candidate forum via Zoom webinar this Thursday, February 10th at 10 o'clock. I mean, at 6 o'clock. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll be in bed by then. At 6 o'clock. And the order of that forum will be reversed. And we will begin with the council candidates and end with the mayoral candidates. The Zoom link is the same as it was for tonight's forum. So thank you all and have a good evening. Good night. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you all.
Remember to vote.